Hi, this is the Philosophical Angle Show, and I'm your host, Chris Angle. I'm the author of 4 books on philosophy, one of which is The Philosophical Equations of Economics. And these books are available for viewing at thephilosophicalangle.com. If you'd like to contact us or make comment on the show, you can give us an email at contact@thephilosophicalangle.com. Along with me is my colleague and co-host, Rick Samuelson. Rick graduated from Yale and has MBAs from Wharton and Tufts, and he's an independent venture capitalist. Good to see you, Rick.
I do.
Along with me is the purpose of the Philosophical Angle is to examine the nature and concepts and ideas in current media. And this week we're going to talk about the President Biden's speech when he spoke to the nation about the verdict from the Officer Chauvin trial, and he said that basically that America is bad, that we are a racist country, that we are systemically racist, which means that racism pervades our entire society. And he noted as an example the trial and the fact that Officer Chauvin was kneeling on the neck of George Floyd, who was already in handcuffs on the ground, incapacitated, and yet he put his knee on there for a long time, and eventually the man succumbed. And the others around them, the other officers, looked on and did nothing. And so it's obviously a terrible travesty, and President Biden noted that, but his conclusions are that America is bad. And so we have to kind of take a step back and kind of wonder, why would he say that America is bad? I mean, he's an American, and there are a lot of Americans in America, and so why are they all bad? Why is racism pervade through the entire society? Does it? Is this actually true? So we're going to go back here and look at the nature of between the two political parties and see why he says what he says. And the first thing we're going to look at is that the nature of a political party goes right back to the nature of when society was formed, and you have the haves and the have-not. So a person of power rises above the others, and so you have the first class of a party, which is the haves, and then the have-nots work either together or for the haves. And as society advances, it becomes more of a class society where the haves have everything and the have-nots have very little. And so you can see that all throughout history, where the haves have the kings and queens and the nobles, and the have-nots are the workers, the serfs, the proletariats, and then there are 5 dictums that run political thought. And the first dictum of the haves as well as the have-nots is the law of demand for the good. All life demands that which is good for it. And then the second dictum is St. Augustine's principle of libido dominandi, the will to dominate. And the third is that the have-nots are inherently not good. And the fourth is noblesse oblige. So we're going to talk about these and how it influences Biden's speech here in a little bit. The fifth one will not be of any consequence today. So the workers and the serfs and the proletariats and the people of the bottom class, they obviously stick the first dictum of life and of political thought is that they want to do that which is good for themselves, and that's all of life, whether you're the have or the have-nots. And so the haves, as society advances, the haves are the kings and the queens and the nobles, and the nobles need as society advances, a group of facilitators in order to control the have-nots. And as society advances, government gets larger and larger, and these nobles and their associates are replaced with government bureaucrats. And in addition to that, you have corporate management, and we can see that today. All the large corporations are going politically correct, and are siding with the government bureaucrats and doing things like censoring the conservatives, and so these associates, these facilitators of the government incorporate corporate management because they are needed to control the have-nots, and control is anti-cooperative, and so they believe that and they do this because they believe that the nature of the serfs is that they are inherently bad, which is dictum 3 that we just went over. And and the left believe that the have-nots are just of a lower class, and so they look down on them. And these facilitators of the government class control the have-nots through motivation and through actual control. And a sample of the motivation is welfare, giving welfare funds to do nothing in exchange for their vote. And the haves will think that they are providing a social service when they set up this welfare and a social net. And the haves believe that they have an obligation to set up a basic social net, as well as some of the have-nots today also believe that. And thus is born a concept came out of the 1800s called noblesse oblige, and this is dictum 4, that the nobles, that government, that the people of higher up must have a social net for the lower classes. And you can see this all the way from America, which has a social net in welfare, to the communists, which have a greater welfare net, to the fascists, to the socialists. There's all sorts of degrees of this welfare concept that's produced by the noblesse oblige dictum number 4 concept. And this control tends to get worse over time, and because they are more involved with control, and they're more involved with control because of the dictum that all are bad, that the lower class is no good, and so. Some of the left believe that the have-nots are bad because they're just not of a social class, and what happens is that while they are in this lower class, they tend to want, because of dictum number 1, they tend to try and break out and become of a higher class and do better, and they try to become in the middle class. And as they do, such as Officer Chauvin, he broke out, and he's become he popped out of the lower class, and it's due to his bad nature, which is typical, as President Biden pointed out, because he's white, and he's of the white have-not class. He came out and joined the middle class, and in the doing so, he subordinated a black man, which was a very unjust thing to do, which is and we all agree on it. Everybody who's ever watched that video agrees on how bad that was. And Chauvin came out doing so because he is an oppressor, and he is an oppressor because he has come out of the serf class and become privileged. And when he leaves the lower class, the serf class, that is, he breaks the contract that was in place by the noblesse oblige, which is again dictum 4. That's in place, and he tries to become a noble's facilitator, but he fails because he has a bad nature, dictum 3, as all the have-nots, especially all the have-not whites, as they are all of the deplorable class. And so Chauvin, who was a trusted have-not facilitator, who is entrusted with disseminating control of the have-nots, being on the police force, went too far in his duties, and as such he must be punished severely. And so he was, and the system has come through, which President Biden notes, with his punishment. And so we, as President Biden would say, the have class, the kings, the nobles, the facilitator class, have punished him for his violation of breaking the noblesse oblige contractual relationship that the haves have with the have-nots. And so Chauvin is representative of the have-nots that obtains a privilege, abuses it. He abuses that privilege because of his inherent badness, which in this case is his inherent racism, which was on display in his placing his knee on George Floyd's neck, which while he was handcuffed, and eventually killing him, which is indeed a terrible thing. And therefore, President Biden, in his address to the nation and really to the world, declares that America is systemically racist. And so what President Biden means is that those whites of the have-not deplorable class, and those that come out of the have-not class and join the middle class, are racist because they are of a systemically bad nature, and so they want to they must be controlled, and they must be controlled further in our society. And that's what they noted in the speech and after the speech, that it won't end here. And so we can expect President Biden and his facilitators and his Democratic progressive elite will come forth with more racial control edicts in the near future. They will advocate that we of the white lower class will need to be re-educated, and they'll tell us that that we don't need our guns anymore, and that we all need to be equal in every way. And so this re-education is coming. Rick, what do you think?
Yeah, to me, it all leads to, one of their principal policy prescriptions, which is a quota system at every level of business, government, education, and the death of meritocracy. That's a primary objective for the Socialist Democrats. Curtailing personal freedom is a foregone conclusion. Um, that includes freedom of speech, never mind the Second Amendment, but freedom of speech, freedom of religion, all of these freedoms enumerated in the Constitution have to be curtailed under this rubric of controlling the quote-unquote out-of-control racism. And, you know, what's remarkable is they succeed in cherry-picking the facts and ignoring the dramatic increase in crime across most major cities. You know, murders up 20, 30, 40, 50% in some cases. Much of it, you know, blacks killing blacks. And that appears to be irrelevant and certainly not controversial, and much less a problem that needs to be addressed. It doesn't need to be addressed because it hasn't been declared a problem. And it can't be a problem because it can't credibly be called a racist construct. So when these issues get raised, it, you know, it's absolutely essential that the Democrats change the subject, and they do, and will ignore any kind of substantive discussion on these kinds of matters. In Virginia, apparently, they're eliminating advanced math courses in certain instances on the basis of achieving some notion of equity. The use of euphemisms is remarkable, and one thing conservatives almost universally share is a very slow rate of catching on to the full implications of these various euphemisms that the Democrats tend to bandy about for a period of months or years before instituting some sort of policy prescription allegedly on the basis of a euphemism, whether it's equity or inclusion or anti-racism. The conservatives generally are very slow to pick up on the full implications from a policy perspective of what these seemingly innocent words mean. And it's because you're never quite sure what the full policy prescription is going to be, with a word as innocent sounding as equity or inclusion, you're always caught on the back foot, and that's essential. I mean, part of the Biden rant, and that's generally how he speaks, it's usually a rant if you listen to the words rather than the tone, is that, you know, there's a consistent attempt to put whites, taxpayers, corporations on their back foot, right? To condemn. It's a kind of Saul Alinsky technique. Condemn them, you know, whether it's grounded in fact or not. Condemn them first, put them on the back foot, popularize these notions through a docile media, which is what we have. We have an unthinking docile media that, you know, literally parrots government talking points with no critical thinking or very little. And you know, that applies to whether it's the Washington Post, the New York Times, the LA Times, the NBC, right on down the list. And all one can hope is that enough tax-paying Americans, and frankly enough whites who feel impugned by these overstretched and often nonsensical accusations, are going to wake up in a couple of years and vote accordingly and throw the bums out, because that finally is the only recourse when you're faced with a party which is so bent on ideologically transforming the United States.
Yeah, what do you think is going to happen in the near future? Do you think any particular policies are going to be placed on the table by the Democrats in order to make effectuate these thoughts?
Oh, absolutely. Whether they'll succeed with all of this or not remains to be seen, but they're going to attempt to impose black reparations. They're going to attempt to pack the Supreme Court. They're going to attempt to make Washington, D.C. a state. None of this stuff would normally pass constitutional muster, but the attempt will certainly be made, and then they will probably achieve some element of some of these immediate objectives. They will attempt to enforce a nationwide curriculum that's, based on horrendous theories like critical race theory. They'll attempt to push for medical clinics in the high schools that will ultimately be able to perform abortions and other kinds of procedures like that. They will. They've got a whole laundry list of policy objectives, all dependent on having absolutely centralized control, so that they can run roughshod over our federalist system and effectively ignore the rights of the states.
And be able to control the individual in all aspects of his life.
Yes, and with full backing, I might add, from Silicon Valley and other corporate sectors. So we've entered a very, I would say, a very concerning phase in U.S. history. I think it's a foregone conclusion that they will lose at least their House majority by a huge margin in a couple of years. So that may slow them down, but they can do a lot of damage between now and then, especially with the degree to which they are resorting to, reconciliation type measures to pass legislation. I mean, it's remarkable the pace at which over the last 10 years the legislative branch has torn away all of the safeguards that earlier required some sort of accommodation between the parties and some sort of horse trading on particular legislation. We've gone from generally requiring a significant majority to pass significant legislation or appoint judges and vet other cabinet members, to now moving steadily over time toward a one vote majority being able to pass pretty much any legislation they want. The filibuster allegedly stands in the way, but they appear to be quite clever about evading that even.
Okay, Rick, thanks very much. And we'll see everybody else on the next edition of the Philosophical Angle.